Guns, they are a part of our culture, but now armed officers stand guard at our kids' schools.
How much is a child's life worth?
It comes after 17 people were shot and killed in Parkland.
You know, everybody was screaming because we didn't know what was going on.
But we must take a closer look when it comes to protecting our kids, including mental health.
It takes somebody to recognize something's going on.
A generation under fire, your rights, their safety. This is News 6 at 4. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lisa Bell, and this week marks a horrific chapter in Florida's history.
I'm at Austin. Thursday will be 1 year since that deadly school shooting in Parkland that took the lives of 17 students and staff.
And I'm Julie Broughton. It's had a lasting impact on the South Florida community and beyond. News 6 anchor Ginger Gadsden joins us live now tonight at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School to take us back to that day. Ginger.
Guys, it is a day we would all like to forget, but quite frankly, it is the reason we are dedicating an entire day to a generation under fire, because we can't, nor should we forget the day one person was allowed to walk into this high school on Valentine's Day and break the heart of an entire community. Later on. Back to you.
Ginger, thank you. Just 3 weeks after the tragedy in Parkland, you may remember former Governor Rick Scott signed the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act into law. The bill set aside nearly $500,000 to upgrade security measures like installing bulletproof glass doors and metal detectors. It also requires at least one safe school officer in every school and gave districts the option to participate in the Armed Guardian program. The Volusia County School District has had success with this program. They began training nearly a dozen new applicants today. District leaders say some of the new guards will soon be replacing deputies in schools. But some of our local counties are still struggling to meet the new state mandate. News 6's Jerry Askin took a closer look and joins us live now from Lockhart Middle School in Orlando. Jerry.
Julie, yes, all happening to get results and keep kids safe. And I tell you, but for some agencies here in Central Florida, funding, training, and recruitment still remain big issues. Take Orange County, for example. It's taken months to finally meet those new statewide SRO requirements. And I found out today, Orange County is still short 70 patrol deputies after having to shuffle to meet this requirement.
Jerry, thank you. Another topic that's become a national conversation after Parkland is mental health.
The arrest of Nicholas Cruz exposed a long list of disciplinary problems and red flags raised before the massacre.
It motivated Florida lawmakers to set aside nearly $70 million to improve access to mental health services. News 6 investigator Adriana Ivashinsky joins us now with how that money is now being used to get results in our classrooms. Adriana?
Well, I checked with the Florida Department of Education, and each school district received between $250,000 to more than $4 million to address the issue and to try to keep troubled students from grabbing a gun and bringing it to school. And the conversation continues over on clickorlando.com. That is where I linked the mental health plans of all 10 Central Florida school districts and how much they received. That way you can see exactly how they are spending that mental health money. Guys.
Very important. Adriana, thank you. Now, still ahead at 4, promoting gun safety.
The tourist attraction inviting people all over the world to experience firearms in a secure environment will take you inside.
First, though, you have the right to have a gun in your home, but we've learned not everyone stores it properly. Trooper Steve shows us how you can get results for your safety.
When we began talking about tackling this day of guns, rights, and safety, as a mom, I really wanted to know more about some of the options out there to protect families if there are firearms in the home.
That's a good concern to have, and with the help of Addison's Gun Shop down in Osceola County, they provided these to us, and we are using replica firearms. They're airsoft, so no one should be concerned at home. So I'd like to start with this one. This is pretty cool.
This is yours.
This is my personal one. I keep this out in plain view. It looks like the New English Dictionary, but right on the inside, it is an actual safe, and it's key locked, so you have to be able to make sure that...
That makes me nervous, though, because you might lose your key, and then you don't know where it is.
So it's good safe, but if it's a priority firearm for you, maybe not the case. This one is something that maybe you keep in the nightstand.
No matter how you look at guns in our society, there is an undeniable fascination with them. Their prevalence, their power, and their place in pop culture. So much so that right here in Central Florida, there is the equivalent of a theme park for guns. Tourists from all over the country and the world come to experience weapons as they would not have access to in their hometown. News 6's Clay Lepard takes us inside the high-powered Machine Gun America. While Machine Gun America stresses it's only an attraction, now most gun ranges in Central Florida obviously are places where you can legally shoot your own gun. We have put together a map of those locations inside this story on clickorlando.com/gunviolence.
Our conversation on guns, rights, and safety continues throughout the evening. Coming up tonight at 6, News 6 is hosting a special town hall. You can submit your questions for our panel of experts on our Facebook page or on our website.
We've been researching the numbers for months now and have found Florida has the 3rd highest rate of school shootings over the last 6 decades. We've also tracked what schools have the most shootings, while high schools have consistently led the way. Shootings at colleges and universities have really skyrocketed. We also found some school locations are more dangerous than others. Most people are killed in outside areas like parking lots, while libraries, meeting rooms, and off-campus events are historically safer. To review the growing threat at American schools, go to clickorlando.com/gunviolence. Inside the story, you can find our in-depth research. They were the ones who never came home.
As soon as we got down there, the shots came through our door.
A gunman taking innocent lives.
I kept checking Hona's pulse. I was holding her hand the entire time.
A community torn apart. Now the state is making changes.
We want every child that arrives on one of our campuses to go home safely.
Gun legislation stamped and approved. Lawmakers now divided.
There's one common thread between all of these horrific tragedies. It's the gun.
Banning the weapon itself will not prevent that person from doing a violent act.
Are guns the problem, or are they getting into the wrong hands?
We need criminal control, not gun control.
This is News 6 at 5. Guns, rights, and safety. Well, tonight, a UCF student is reliving the moments a gunman fired several shots. Her friends nearby killed. This is News 6 at 5. I'm Matt Austin.
And I'm Lisa Bell. And tonight we are committed to looking at gun-related issues from legislation to school guardians now in place. It comes 1 year after the deadly school shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland. 17 people lost their lives, many of them students. News 6 anchor Ginger Gadsden begins our coverage at 5. She is live in Parkland tonight. And Ginger, the student you spoke with now lives here in Central Florida. To read more about each of the victims of the Parkland school shooting, head to clickorlando.com/gunviolence. We have images of each of the victims and comments from their families. Well, Florida lawmakers will soon return to Tallahassee with plans to discuss new gun legislation.
News 6 investigator Mike DeForest traveled to the state capitol to find out what our elected leaders are proposing.
Following last year's deadly shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, lawmakers here in Tallahassee passed a series of gun control measures. Now, this year here at the state capitol, some want to repeal those brand new gun laws, while others want to impose even more restrictions.
927 people. That is how many people have been killed in school shootings in the U.S. in the last 59 years. News 6 has crunched the numbers. Since the Columbine shooting in 1999, 487 people have been killed in schools. In 51% of those, the shooter has been caught. In 33% of those shootings, the shooter killed themselves. To see these numbers broken down, you can head to clickorlando.com/gunviolence.
Well, Florida reacted after the deadly school shooting in Parkland. Weeks following the shooting, Florida became the first state to require police or armed guardians in all schools. Now, early this morning, a dozen new applicants began their training. Leaders say these people will replace deputies in schools. News 6's Lauren Korn spoke to Volusia County leaders about the success so far. Well, minutes ago, we told you about how recent changes in gun laws can affect you and your family.
But there are other ways people are getting guns without background checks and avoiding other restrictions. News 6 investigator Adriana Ivashinsky joins us in studio with how guns can still end up in the hands of children, criminals and even the mentally ill.
Absolutely, yes, even though there are background checks and mandatory waiting periods when you buy a gun in a store or at a show, there's no gun registry, so there is nothing that can prevent the private sale of a gun between two people or giving the gun as a gift. Now, I talked with both gun owners and crime victims about this unrestricted access to guns.
Thank you. Our conversation on guns, your safety, and your rights will continue throughout this evening. You're taking a live look right now from our Studio B. That's where our town hall discussion will begin at 6 o'clock. We will have a panel of experts from law enforcement, mental health, and school leaders answering a bunch of questions for you. You can still submit your questions right now on our Facebook page and our website. Lisa Bell is going to run the show for you over there, and I'm interested to see it.
Very interesting. Yeah, we have 80 people who are going to be here tonight, so it should be a very good discussion.
Good evening to you. I'm Matt Austin. Our News 6 commitment to covering a generation under fire started nearly a year ago this week after the mass shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. Ginger Gadsden joins us from Parkland a little later, but our conversation tonight goes into every aspect of life with guns and how to keep them out of the wrong hands. Lisa Bell began our town hall discussion on clickorlando.com at 6 o'clock. We start this newscast by listening in to that forum.
Surrounds our schools, wraps our schools up, and just really supports them. You're one of those people who does that, and I applaud you, and we need groups like that all across Orange County.
Okay, we do want to bring in a new question real quick because we're at the start of our 7 o'clock newscast and we have some on-air viewers who are joining us now. So please tell us your name and your question.
Of course. So hi everyone, my name is Hannah Siegel. I'm here on behalf of the Youth Coalition to End Gun Violence. We're a local student nonprofit that wants to mobilize students to get involved in local elections. And I wanted to come up and just remind everyone here in our audience that on March 12th, several Orange County and Central Florida municipalities are holding elections. So I know Windermere, Belle Isle, Winter Park, and Maitland, to name just a few, are going to have mayor and city commission elections. And that's just one small area where local dollars can be freed up for after-school programs and for mental health funding, community involvement. And so my comment is more of a comment and less of a question, but just raising that to everyone.
Why is that important to you?
Well, I'm a student, and in this past year after Parkland, I became involved in activism because I was sitting in a car on the way home from a doctor's office getting text messages from friends at Marjory Stoneman Douglas who were hiding in closets, who were fearing for their friends' lives and hearing gunshots. Nearly every semester, I know that as part of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Safety Act, every semester schools here in Florida have to have active shooter drills. We have our teachers banging on our doors, simulating active shooters. We're hiding under desks and we're imagining our classmates and ourselves being shot to death. What we've learned in this past year of getting involved and coming to events like this is that when we show up at local events, especially local, where there's so much space at the table where people are, staying home or not as involved, there's so much that can be done. So if there's one thing I've learned in this past year of activism work, it's that there's not as much funding and opportunity available at the small level, but there's so much work that can be done. So,
well, thank you for being here tonight, and we want to get to your question.
Hi, my name is Ryan Joyner. I'm a senior at Windermere High School, and I was just curious, and I believe anyone could really answer this question of how media and societal factors incorporate and either help or work against gun violence. And kind of a follow-up, how are children affected? Because I'm about to cycle out. Even though gun violence is going to be an issue I deal with, I'm no longer going to be in schools. How are kindergartners and the first graders that I tutor and that I babysit affected by this public and very hurtful, I guess, situation?
So there's something to be said. Thank you so much for your advocacy and your leadership, and I'm so excited for you as you continue to grow as a leader. So seriously, thank you for your work. There's something to be said about trauma-informed care, which was already mentioned, and ACEs. And ACEs is an acronym for Adverse Childhood Experiences, correct? Okay, got it. And so basically it speaks to that when a young child, 0 to 4 as an example, age frame, when they experience trauma, which we know in situations of concentrated disadvantage, like communities, Paramore as an example, the likelihood of you experiencing trauma because of other social determinants of health is very real. So whether it's poverty, whether it's lack of access to health care, lack of clean water, clean air, food, all of these create an environment of trauma for a young person, which impacts their ability to reach their fullest efficacy. And so when I hear comments about schools that have more resources and schools that have parents of more financial wealth, it's going to be a lot easier for you to engage at that level versus the environments where DeMarcus works at, where you already are engaged. You're trying everything you can, yet you keep hitting a wall, because the realities of poverty is that you are going to see more trauma. You're going to experience more trauma. And I grew up working class, so and I was one of the lucky ones, even in my situation. So I think we have to look at this at an intersectional lens to solve poverty. And that requires different policy that I know in the legislature we debate all the time, whether it's issues around minimum wage, issues around tax structures, issues around funding, fully funding public education, paying our teachers better so they can actually do their job, and they can have an ability to detect trauma themselves and have that student find a resource of help. So there's a lot of layers that we can't ignore in this conversation that are going to make sure that those kindergarten and first graders are going to grow up to be healthy and happy and able to create a safe environment for one another, and ideally reach a point where we don't have to keep having these type of conversations anymore. But it's up to us to get it right now, and I encourage you to continue on this effort because we need you.
Yes.
So if I can
if I could just add one thing with the trauma-informed care, that is so important. I know that we keep talking about that today, but really to get that early on, and that is not too young of an age. In fact, if they are experiencing it at that age, we should be out there dealing with that. So absolutely, thank you for bringing that forward.
What I wanted to dovetail on that is for anybody who's not familiar, we have trauma-informed initiatives going on at Orange County Public Schools. But for people who don't realize it, I think a lot of times we think, well, if kids grow up in an environment where there's a lot of stress and there's a lot of trauma, then they're going to just miss something in terms of their thought process. The reality is their brains actually do not develop the same. It is really, it's a physical, not just an emotional difference. And so it's extremely important that we catch that as early as we can. And if you want to talk about changing it, and thank you so much for mentioning education, the change agent, the change agent in all of this has to be the education system, because long term, if we want to break the cycle of poverty, and you're absolutely right, there is a very direct correlation between poverty and trauma in children and what's happening in the house. It's very tied together, but the key to that is a great education system and pulling those kids up and changing the future through them. That is our best chance.
Representative Altman, you're on the state's education committee, so what are some of the things that you guys are looking at in this next legislative year?
Well, I agree. And when an individual, so much of us are very much products of our environment. And literally. And we cannot solve these problems in the classrooms alone. We have many great teachers out there, many great educators, and we know that those 6 to 7 hours of school time is not going to solve the problems. We need to broaden our way of looking out there and reaching out into the communities. Windermere, wow, that's fantastic. We need more of those type of community, that type of community involvement, parental involvement, getting different groups, whether it's churches, synagogues, volunteer organizations. And what DeMarcus talks about, we have got to broaden our way of thinking and get down at that community level. Criminal justice reform, big issue. We need to stop criminalizing our youth. So many of our young people are getting involved in a hardened criminal justice system that is making our system not work, it's making it worse. We need to have alternative juvenile diversion programs that really turn these kids around. We've looked hard at civil citations for first youth offenders, nonviolent, juvenile expungement. We got to get away from this overuse of crime and punishment that's criminalizing our youth and give them opportunities to get through the tough challenges they have in their community.
We've heard, though, or I've heard from some law enforcement officers, they've described it to me as like a catch and release system, though. They go out and catch them, take them to jail, and they're talking about juveniles, and within hours they're back on the streets doing the same thing.
All right, so you know, us in law enforcement, we didn't become police officers, deputy sheriffs to arrest our kids. That's not why we want to be out there. We want to catch the real criminals. So we have embraced the juvenile civil citation program. In Orange County, all over Orange County, juvenile civil citations have gone up, and arrests, physical arrests of juveniles have gone down by over 20%. So we're doing a fantastic job. We definitely agree that for nonviolent offenses, yeah, we're going to give the juvenile civil citations. However, there are people in our society, including juveniles. There's one juvenile in Orange County that's been arrested 115 times, and he's basically terrorizing this community. He keeps getting out and getting out and getting out, and those are the people that we want behind bars, whether they're a juvenile or not. But as a whole, law enforcement in Orange County has embraced the juvenile civil citations, and those continue to be on the rise.
Mr. O'Mara, you're a criminal defense attorney.
I actually, I was speaking a little bit less about, criminalizing or those kind of situation, of how media and how cultural aspects of our society affect us.
Yeah, I want to respond to what Ryan said. Thank you, because that was the original part of your question.
Yeah.
The media has a responsibility to cover these events. To address that, what I would say, Ryan, is media has a responsibility.
Really good conversation going on here in our studio. Our full town hall forum continues on clickorlando.com. It goes for another 20 minutes until 7:30 if you want to check it out.